If you didn't get to watch the entirety of the NFL Combine, I'm going to summarize it for you in 10 minutes. Welcome to Loeb's Look Ahead, presented by Pickett. My name is Max Loeb, a.k.a. Loeb's Leads, looking ahead to everything in the NFL world while breaking down every little thing that happened from the Combine Wednesday to Sunday, the offensive linemen, the DBs, the skill players, everything you need to know. Metrics in terms of how they ran, some of the standouts, the winners, the losers, even though there weren't too many losers at the Combine, as well as general NFL news, things that are going on in the sports world, all for you in this next 10 to 15 minutes here on Loeb's Leads. If you're new and you've never been here before, welcome. I make these videos Monday through Friday, 6 p.m. Eastern, keeping you updated and informed on everything going on in the sports world. So make sure you subscribe if you're not part of the family. That way you don't miss a video. And if you have been here before, make sure you leave a like on this video. Helps me out a ton, means a lot to me, and lets me know you enjoy this type of content. Without further ado, let's talk about the NFL Combine. Let's talk numbers and statistics. I'm sure a lot of you guys saw the 40-yard dashes. It goes way beyond the 40-yard dashes. We'll talk about the 40s, but it goes way beyond the 40-yard dashes. I'm talking shuttles. We're going to look at all of the different statistical numbers and ideologies for positions and drills. But the most important thing you always want to look for is any out-of-position standouts at different drills. For example, if you're watching the 40-yard dash and you're seeing, running backs, receivers, even quarterbacks sometimes in like the top 20 overall, but all of a sudden you see a tight end or all of a sudden you see a linebacker. Those are the athletic freaks you need to keep an eye out for. Let's look at these different numbers from the NFL Combine, and we're going to start with the running back position. You can look at the top 10 running backs on the screen right now. Again, these guys were absolutely unreal at the NFL Combine this time around. Trevor Etienne, a guy who is a little bit smaller, right, running a 4.42. DJ Giddens at a 4.43. Travion Henderson, a guy I had my eyes on for a long, long time. 4.43 from him as well. Donovan Edwards with a 4.44. And the interesting thing, we're going to talk about Jaden Blue here in a second, but Jaden Blue at a 4.38 seems great on paper. Same with Isaiah Bond. But I want to talk about what they said pre-media. You may know what I'm talking about here and how that correlates to the winners and the losers in the Combine, because they're very fast. We know this, but they both said they were going to run sub 4.2s and the 4.1s, and they didn't. We know this. So Jaden Blue, a guy you got to think about, obviously very good, very fast. Let's look at the defensive linemen as well. Obviously, you have guys like Ty Robinson, who stole the show at a 4.83, and these are the interior guys. A guy I absolutely love looking at the MAC, Darius Alexander. Another guy you may know from Georgia, Warren Brinson at a 5.09. Tyron Ingram-Dawkins is a quote-unquote interior guy, but can do a lot of different things. And then we have the exterior, the edge guys, James Pierce Jr. at a freaky 4.47. Shamar Stewart, who we're going to talk about a bunch, at a 4.19. And then Landon Jackson, a guy I personally want to look at and talk about a little bit. Landon Jackson was very, very good at a 4.68. Another edge rusher you have to keep an eye on as well. Landon Jackson at a 4.68. Let's move to the wide receivers. Again, you can see on the screen right here, you got Isaiah Bond on there, right? Tied ninth at a 4.39. You also have guys like Matthew Golden. You also have guys like Shamar Deek. And then the guy I really want to talk about, and I am fascinated to see how this goes as time goes on, Dante Thornton Jr. at a 4.3. You remember what happened when another Tennessee wide receiver named Jalen Hyatt put on a show athletically. His pro day had a lot of rave reviews about his speed, his dynamic ability, and how that turned out. I am fascinated to see if there's anything else that comes from Dante Thornton Jr., if his stock rises a little bit because of the Combine. A lot of times when you watch the Combine, you see players who do really well, their stock vaults up the board. Inherently, that's going to move other people down the board. That's how a draft board works. But a Combine can do a lot more good things for you than it can do bad. That's why when we talk about the losers, everybody has to be taken with a grain of salt, and everybody is not make or breaks. Like, they're not going to get drafted or not going to get not drafted, avoided in the draft because of a bad Combine performance. That's not how it's going to work. Let's look at the DBs here. As you can see, Maxwell Hairston, a guy I want to look at a 4.28. Jahad Barrett is another one at a 4.39. Justin Wally at a 4.4. But honestly, guys, the guy that really surprised me, and you got to take it with a grain of salt, he's a safety. was Nick Emmanwori. That was my big winner of the NFL Combine. We'll talk a little bit more about him. But Nick Emmanwori was very, very good, dynamic in terms of the 40, his splits in terms of 10, 20, and 40 yards within the 40, the high jump, the broad jump. That's an athletic freak that I saw in the Combine out of South Carolina. You definitely got to remember, don't know if he cracks the first round. Generally speaking, those elite safeties go, unless you're a freak of nature, once-in-a-lifetime player, they go in the back half of the first anyways. Does he do enough to get into the first? We wait to see, but he's a dynamic player, probably going to be in the top 30 in the draft if I had to guess. That was my big winner out of the DB room. Let's talk tight ends before we move on. The tight ends, Terrence Ferguson, a guy out of Oregon at a 4.63, was potentially the most impressive tight end I saw at this combine. Obviously, especially my Ohio people, we all know Harold Fannin Jr. out of Bowling Green, an absolute freak of nature when it comes to athleticism, run after the catch. He put on a great show at the 4.71 number at the 40-yard dash. But CJ Dupree, look at this guy, 4.69. We're going to look at some other combine statistical numbers here in a second. CJ Dupree, guys, he was an absolute monster on the bench press. The bench press. Yeah, we're going to pull those numbers up for you right now. The bench press, CJ Dupree was an absolute freak, guys, an absolute freak. He put up a ridiculous, we'll pull the bench up for you. You see, look at this. The top bench press, 33 reps from Luke Kandra, guard out of Cincinnati. You see these guys, defensive lineman, offensive tackle, guard, defensive tackle, center, guard, defensive tackle, edge. CJ Dupree put up 32 reps at the bench press, the second highest out of anybody, any position in this entire combine, ahead of defensive linemen, ahead of offensive linemen. To do that and to put up that 40-yard dash is freaky. It's freaky. Again, that's what I just talked about 2 minutes ago. When you're looking at each athletic feat, you can see there's a bunch of linemen on here. Who sticks out? Who's the unique guy in this group? It's CJ Dupree. We're going to look at the other ones here too. You look at the shuttle again. This is a DB receiver running back drill. Look at Brady Cook at a 4.17. In the top, I believe that's top 10, the top 10. Look at this guy right here. Donovan Eziraku. I want to make sure I pronounce that right. Eziraku. He is an edge out of Boston College. You're going to see his name like 3 times in this thing. You're going to see his name like 3 times. That's the shuttle. You move to the 3 cone. Again, this is a receiver, DB, running back, centric drill. Scroll down. There he is. Donovan Eziraku. I want to make sure I say that right, but look at Harold Fannin Jr. at 6.97. Look at Brady Cook again. Those are the athletes you have to keep an eye for. In terms of the broad jump, Nick Emmanwori, you guys see it there, 11.6. 11.6, which was the highest out of anybody in the entire combine. Obviously, some first-round picks aren't running or aren't doing the certain drills, but that is the highest out of anybody in the entire combine. Quinshawn Judkins, another guy who put up great numbers, a great raw athletic score, which we'll look at here in a second. Look at Shamar Stewart, another guy who's probably going to go in the first round, very athletic player, dominating there. You look at the vertical. Who led everybody? Nick Emmanwori. Again, this is a DB receiver, running back-ish centric drill, but Landon Jackson out of Arkansas in the top 10 in terms of overall vertical jump numbers. Another guy who's actually, cracked the top 10. Teddy Buchanan out of Cal, and then Shamar Stewart again up there. But you can look at all these guys. These are running back, receiver, DB-centric drills, and the guys like the edge rushers, the linebackers who are cracking this are the guys you really, really have to keep an eye on. Cam Scatabo in the top 25 at a 39.5. In terms of the overall splits, the 10-yard split from the 40, the fastest, Nick Emmanwori. Matthew Golden also very fast as well. You can scroll down a little bit. Again, these are running back, DB, receiver type drills, so it makes sense. But when you scroll down a little bit farther, you want to see who gets off the line faster. There are no defensive linemen that at least topped into there. When you look at the edges that wound up, it was James Pierce, who had a great 40 overall, Colin Oliver, who had a great 40 overall, Shamar Stewart, who had a great 40 overall. And then you look at the 40 numbers just in general. Maxwell Hairston at 4.28 was the fastest of the entire weekend. But you keep scrolling down, guys. Again, you want to find the DBs. You want to find not the DBs. This is a DB drill, wide receiver drill. You want to find the guys who stick out. In terms of overall 40, nobody there. But when you look at the linebackers, the defensive ends, James Pierce Jr., extremely fast. You look at the inside guys, Ty Robinson, extremely, extremely fast. You look at the linebackers. We talked about Jahad Campbell in the mock draft, if you didn't see that. Great showing for him in the 40. Those are the numbers you need to know when it comes to these 40-yard dashes. Let's talk combine winners. I got 4 here and 4 losers again. When you talk winners and losers, you can do a lot more for yourself at the combine to bolster your draft stock than hurt it. You can do a lot more to bolster than hurt it. The first one, Omarion Hampton. Unbelievable raw athletic score. I'm going to show you guys that in a second. But we talked about him in my first mock draft. I had him going at the back end of round 1, actually had the Browns trading back up into round 1 to get this guy. Now, if you see anybody saying he is ahead of Ashton Jeanty, they are doing it for clicks. They're doing it for clicks, guys. They're doing it for clicks. Ashton Jeanty is the best running back in this draft class, and don't let anybody convince you otherwise. Omarion Hampton still put on a show, though. I'll pull up his raw athletic score for you here. He was unbelievable. Unbelievable. In terms of overall numbers, 9.78. 9.78 relative athletic score. Great in the 40. Very, very bulky back. Almost 6 foot, about 5'11 and a half, which is not great for running backs. It's good, not great. 221. Had a 38-inch vertical, a 9.81 broad jump. In terms of, the shuttle and the 3-cone, the agility stuff, obviously not great. He's a bigger, thicker, more physical back, so that's never really going to be there. But in terms of relative athletic score for him, 9.78. My second big winner, and I don't know how you guys are going to feel about this, but Jalen Milroe, he didn't look horrible throwing the football, but this was the biggest thing. You can see the Senior Bowl, which was 4 weeks ago. His hand size, I don't know how this was possible. I don't know if it was mismeasured. His hand size grew like 3/4 of an inch. Now, the general threshold when it comes to quarterback hand size is 9 inches. It's 9 inches. I don't think my hands are 9 inches, but that's the general threshold when it comes to quarterback hand size. All of a sudden, he's bolstering up to almost 9.5 after a month. I don't know what type of voodoo he did. Maybe he contacted Aaron. I don't know. But his hands grew in that time, which is crazy, and it dramatically helped him. He is one of the big winners from this combine just based off the measurements. Small hands are a real thing. That's a real thing for quarterbacks. You have to take it into account. His hand size grew from the Senior Bowl. I don't know how. I don't know if it was mismeasured, but you look at him and, a decent performance throwing the football. He did great. Another guy we already talked about, Nicky Manwari. He was unbelievable. We don't need to, beat a dead horse with that. He was unbelievable athletically. Have a short form video on it already, which if you guys are not following the socials, you can see the handle below. Make sure you are. Nicky Manwari was unbelievable, and it's not just the combine stuff. He has it on film. He's going to push himself into the first round, I think. But the last two guys, really, the Ohio State guys. I was very impressed by a lot of the Ohio State guys. We'll talk Will Howard here in a second. We're not talking about Will Howard right now, but Travion Henderson, I was extremely impressed by. Quinshawn Judkins was the other one. Those running backs in a draft where it's going to be Omarion Hampton and Ashton Jeanty getting all of the headlines, those guys put up great numbers in the 40, in the broad jump, in terms of their relative athletic score compared to other running backs. 2 of the 4 elite relative athletic score running backs were those Ohio State guys. Well, all the attention is going to go there. All the first, let's say 2 rounds of draft picks for running backs will probably just be those 2 guys. Judkins and Travion Henderson are going to be day 2/day 3 steals that are going to come in and immediately help a team. Those are 2 guys I'm looking for. Those are my 4 big winners. My losers, and again, it's a lot harder to, dramatically decrease your draft stock. It's a lot harder to dramatically decrease your draft stock when you are at the combine, but Isaiah Bond and Jaden Blue, 2 guys who, again, ran really fast 40s. They did. They did. There's no doubt about that. I couldn't do it. You couldn't do it, probably. I don't know. You might be able to do it. Probably not, though. They said they were going to run 4.2 or below. They didn't even come close. Like, what? Why would you say that? Is it like a manifestation thing? Is it believing in yourself when nobody else does? I don't know. But they both said they were going to do that, and they both ran, I believe, 4.4s. Like, it wasn't close. So, to me, I am a team looking at that, and, you take it with a grain of salt. We talked about taking the losers with a grain of salt. It's just, why would you say that, right? Like, what? Unless you can back the talk up, why would you say that? when you talk about trash talking just in general or talking in the media, you want to be able to back it up. And teams just watch two guys and not back it up. I don't know how seriously somebody would take that, but that's the reality of it. And kind of made yourself the joke of the combine doing that. But again, two extremely fast 40s. And when you look at the product on the field, the numbers they put up just raw, if you took that whole media aspect away, you would just see two top 10 wide receivers in terms of their 40 times. That's the reality of it. NFL teams, though, probably not going to love seeing the stuff of the media regardless. You look at on tape, on the film, they are good players. They're fast players. Tez Johnson, another receiver I want to talk about. Again, he weighed in, I believe, 154, so he's extremely, extremely light compared to all of the other lighter guys. Like the big comparison I continually saw made was Tank Dell. To put it into perspective, Tank Dell is still, we know how skinny Tank Dell is. Tank Dell is still 10 pounds heavier than Tez Johnson. And he's fast. There's no doubt about that. He's fast, he's quick, he's agile. But he's not that big. And again, you have to take everything with a grain of salt. How sustainable is that in the NFL if you can't have the mass to keep yourself as healthy as possible? I don't know. That's another thing you got to look at in the offseason here. You know, people's bodies change when they get into the NFL. We've seen it time and time again. But Tez Johnson, you thought the weight would be a little bit higher. Sorry, brief water break. You thought the weight would be a little bit higher with a guy like that, at least comparable to some of the other guys who have made headway in the NFL at a lesser weight. Again, I hate to keep just going back to Tank Dell, but that's the best comparison we got, especially with their play styles. You would hope he'd be a little bit closer to that, and you can put on weight in the offseason, going into training camp, all that stuff. But it wasn't there. And the last one we have to talk about is Will Howard. Now, it is so – let me start by saying this. This is why quarterbacks don't want to throw at the combine. This is why Cam Ward and Shedeur Sanders didn't throw at the combine. You are throwing to receivers you've never thrown to before, who run routes different ways. You have absolutely no timing with these guys, and it looks bad. Unless you are perfect and your chemistry matches with this receiver, it looks bad. He was not throwing to Jeremiah Smith out there. He was throwing to the other receivers in the combine. There's no timing. There's a lot more to lose than gain, and that's exactly what happened with Will Howard. If you're going to freak out and say, oh, Will Howard's inaccurate or he can't get the job done at the intermediate throws, the middle of all that stuff. Number one, I'd say go watch the tape. He can do that. I will say he can do that. But number two, it's a severe overreaction to the combine. It's a severe overreaction to everything that's going on. You can't expect somebody to go out there and magically have chemistry with the receiver he's never thrown to before. Shedeur Sanders even tweeted about this in defense of Will Howard. You can't just go out there and throw to somebody you've never thrown to before. It's not going to look good. Now, when we talked about this last week, we said if you have more to gain than lose, you go throw. Will Howard had more to gain than he did lose. Anybody's going to see Will Howard at the Pro Day at Ohio State and Columbus and say, okay, this guy can make a lot of throws. Now, I'm not as gung-ho on Will Howard as a lot of other people are. I think there's some arm strength issues. Don't need to get into that. But he's going to look noticeably better at the Pro Day. I want everybody to know that. He's going to look noticeably better at the Pro Day, even though he's on this losers list for the Combine. Please take it with a grain of salt. He's going to come out. He's going to show out in his Pro Day. Everybody looks good in their Pro Days. You control the drills. You control the drills. The variables are gone. Pro Days matter to quarterbacks a little more in terms of the chemistry realm compared to the Combine. So technically he's on the Combine losers train, but we got to relax a little bit. Let's talk NFL news. There's only a couple things that are going on right now. Number one, Darius Slay has been released from the Philadelphia Eagles. Oddly enough, a report came out, it was a podcast, the Amon-Ra St. Brown podcast, came out probably a month ago, maybe, if I had to guess, where he was basically saying it's Philly or it's Detroit. Now, there are rumors saying he was offered by Baltimore. I would have believed it would have been 2 seasons ago. And he said, my heart's in Philly. People try to get him to stay in Philly. Whatever, regardless. It's Detroit. I think that's the reality. If he wants to play one more year, he's going back to Detroit. 34 years old, if I'm not mistaken. Darius Slay belongs in Detroit. I think he's going to be a part to their Super Bowl run. That's how it's going to go. But Darius Slay has been released or is designated as a post-June 1 cut. Same thing, but he's going to get released. T. Higgins has officially been franchise tagged. He tweeted it out. All the insiders tweeted it out shortly after. Again, I have talked so many times about this, guys. If you're seeing this and you think, okay, T. Higgins is getting traded, you have not read into this situation at all. Last year when this happened, the Cincinnati Bengals made almost no attempt to sign him to a long-term deal. This time around, they are so much more intentional in trying to sign him to a long-term deal, at least as presented to us in the public. But the very interesting thing here, Diana Rossini tweeted this out. The Cincinnati Bengals have made it pretty well known. Their number one priority this offseason is resetting the market with Jamar Chase. Not T. Higgins, Jamar Chase. They cut Alex Kappa today to make sure the cap worked, no pun intended, for this franchise tag and potentially a big extension. I would not be surprised if we see a big Jamar Chase extension before T. Higgins gets his Cincinnati extension, or the reality is if he doesn't get an extension, he's going to get traded. I don't think he will get traded, but if he doesn't get the contract, he's going to. I find it so interesting that Cincinnati has been so publicly outspoken about them re-signing Chase. Again, they've said they're committed to T. Higgins, and they're going to work out a long-term deal. And I honestly, truly believe they're going to. But Jamar Chase is going to reset the market probably this offseason. If Jamar Chase signs his long-term deal before T. Higgins signs his, I think T. Higgins will request a trade. I think that's the direction it could go. So the Bengals have to be very, very careful with how they attempt this situation. Very careful with how they attack this situation, because it could get really ugly fast in Cincinnati if they don't. Really ugly fast in Cincinnati if they don't. We are going to close this Loeb's Look Ahead by always looking ahead at our picks on Monday night as well as Tuesday night for the NBA, college basketball, and everything going on. So if you want to stay with football stuff, I appreciate you watching. Make sure you leave a like and join the family. If you want to talk basketball, see what I'm riding, as well as see how to get a couple extra bucks to make your picks with, stay with me for the next 2 minutes. I'll show you real quick. But let me walk you through everything going on in the NBA tonight and tomorrow night, depending on when you're seeing this, with our Tuesday night picks. And again, all of this stuff is on Pickett, guys. If you're not on Pickett already, click the link in the description. You join with code LEADS, LEADS. If you make sports bets, it automatically tracks them. And when you join with that code and follow me, you can see everything that I am on, as well as copy the bet. So if you see this, like the 3-leg parlay I'm on for Monday night, Miami, Memphis, Detroit. If you see that, you're like, oh, I love that. You press one button, copy it, goes into your sports book, and you ride it with me. And again, by joining with code LEADS, you'll get free cash to do it with. I don't know what you're doing if you're not on Pickett. It's free cash if you're making sports bets. But that is what we were on for tonight. Miami, Memphis, and Detroit, all the win. And then 2 or more field goals in the first 3 minutes of the Hawks-Grizzlies game tonight. That's at minus 138 if you can't see it. But that is what we were on tonight. And then I want to look at the NBA slate for tomorrow, March 4th, or when you're seeing this, March 4th. Looking very briefly, we have Toronto at Orlando, Houston at Indiana. Houston will be coming off a back-to-back. Milwaukee at Atlanta. Atlanta's going to be coming off another game. Knicks, Warriors. Warriors will be coming off a game, I believe, against Charlotte, if I'm not mistaken, Monday night. Philly, Minnesota. And the Cavs travel to Chicago. They should take care of business there. Brooklyn, San Antonio, Clippers, Suns, Pelicans, Lakers. If we're looking at this slate, likely outcome here. Going to be on Orlando at home, and we're probably going to pair it with the Cavs. If we pair it with the Cavs minus 14, that gets up to plus 170. If you pair it with Cavs money line, minus 165, so you can put another thing in there. A favorite relative, let's say a relative to like a minus 200 number, Milwaukee, you get up to plus 152. If Golden State loses tonight, I will probably just pick them straight tomorrow to win. I know they're underdogs right now, looking ahead of it, and honestly, it's not horrible value, but I find it very hard to believe they lose to Charlotte tonight. If the Warriors were to lose, would get on them. Honestly, if they don't lose, still might get on them. It's the hottest team in basketball. But tonight, Warriors are coming off of a loss. They're minus 670 against Charlotte. I think it's 12.5 number. I really don't hate that either, to be honest with you. But that is what we were on tonight. Again, if you are not on Pickett already, you can ride it in my profile. But again, I appreciate you guys watching. I hope you stay up to date on the NFL Combine. If you didn't, I hope this information helped you. Depending on when you're seeing this, another episode or video will be out Tuesday night at 6 p.m. Eastern. So make sure you subscribe. Keep your notifications on so you don't miss it. Like this video if you enjoyed, and we will see you guys next time. God bless.